In one of the fastest growing cities in the world, a love affair is blooming. Melbourne's residents are talking to their trees. A conversation is unfurling.
Dear 1517, I am confessing something very dear to me. I have fallen in love with 1583. Should I leave? Or should I stay? It would be great if you could give me some advice.
Around the world, more people are living in cities than ever before.
How's it going, 1517? I've been wondering, what's the city like for you?
If we change our perspective, we can see that trees are nature's great connectors. When trees breathe, so do we. Each breath cleaning the air and restoring balance. Our past, present and future are intertwined with trees, yet we have lost the ability to see them. To thrive, we must fall in love again with our city's trees and nurture our urban forests.
Hello, 1517. We don't have a lot in common, you being a trandle. I'm glad we're in this together. Regards, a tree lover.
Hello, tree. It's your mother. How come you never call?
Hi folks! Unreal Engine 5.3 is now available. The release brings numerous wide-ranging improvements and some exciting new features, including orthographic rendering, as we continue to expand UE5's functionality and potential for game developers and creators across industries. Find out what's new at unrealengine.com/feed and download 5.3 from your launcher today. September's free marketplace assets have arrived and include an NPC-friendly quest editor for all your story needs and a Lumen-infused ArcViz apartment that allows you to return to the office in style. Not to mention a safe house that will leave you wanting for the apocalypse. Couple that with a melee system and more and you're good to go. Grab them while you can. Recently, we hosted our first Unreal Developer Roundtable and invited 3 former devs who worked in the AAA space to talk about how they branched out to form their own indie studios. One such studio is the Epic MegaJam recipient Fallen Leaf Studio. Inspired by the pandemic's loneliness and the paranoia of John Carpenter's The Thing, all brought together in the immersive Martian experience, Fort Solis. In that developer lineup was also Summerfall Studios, spearheaded by David Gader, who worked on acclaimed games such as Dragon Age Origins. Check out the Roundtable to learn more about their next adventure with the musical murder mystery RPG Stray Gods. Last but not least, we had Ironwood Studios. They talked about the production realities of development with a small team, nailing the feel of driving survival, and how Unreal Engine helped the studio fill out its anomalous portrayal of the Pacific Northwest in Pacific Drive. Dive into the Roundtable and each developer interview on the feed. Moving over to this week's Community Spotlights. Visual artist and art director Jonas Ruber showcases what is possible with Lumen and real-time rendering in Unreal Engine with their latest moving visual cinematic that utilizes the Electric Dreams demo. Let them know what you think of cinematic visuals on the forums. My Crowded Head takes us on a whimsical journey in this heartwarming short film created in Unreal Engine 5, following the comical overreaction when a simple cat-in-a-tree situation turns into an outrageous escapade. Watch Cat Problem in full on their YouTube channel. The Swiss Alps, LiDAR data, Houdini, oh my. This Ghibli-inspired environment takes the very best of what our own world has to offer, along with 3D environment artist Welana Lacroix's exceptional talent for invoking beauty within their latest environmental piece, Solitude. Get the breakdown on their ArtStation. Thanks for watching this week's news and Community Spotlight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and thank you, first of all, everyone, for showing up a little bit later today than normal, but we have a wonderful Chris Murphy here with us today, who hails from Australia, so to make things a little bit easier on him, we adjusted the time. But we'll go through and introduce our guests for today, and then I'll give my whole synopsis at you for why we're specifically going over prototyping today. But before that, Chris, let's start with you. Would you like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself in case they are unfamiliar?
Yeah, sure. So I am a senior tech artist at on the Unreal Engine side of things. Previously working as an evangelist within Epic for the last 7 years. My role's kind of a fun one. I head around and I help different developers. I'm based out of Australia, in case my accent hadn't given me away at this point. So I'm predominantly handling Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia. But every now and then they let me into the Northern Hemisphere, and I end up hanging out at your Unreal Fests and your GDCs, and I meet devs there as well.
Yeah, awesome. When we allow it. Sometimes you can come up here, I guess.
You're like, all right, fine.
I guess
you're out of your cage. Yeah, it's good.
Awesome. And then next we have Dan here as well with us today. Most of you probably have seen him before as well on a couple of streams, but if not, yeah, it's been a little bit. If not, Dan, would you also like to tell us a little bit about yourself for anyone who might not be familiar with you either?
My name is Dan Hutnick, and I started off in the game environment side of everything, and somehow through a crazy, weird series of events, ended up here being the man behind the curtains that tries to keep this show functioning. But every once in a while, a little glitch or something might happen come through. But yeah, I'm the one back here trying to make sure that everything works and looks good. So
yeah, which is much appreciated. Makes everything run smoothly and run well. But yeah, thank you both so much for coming on today to talk about prototyping. Now, in case anyone who's watching is not familiar with this, we're going to be hosting the next Epic MegaJam very soon. We're actually going to be having the kickoff for it next Thursday. So with that in mind, jams are lots of fun, also a lot just in general. Like, you can add a lot of, and then pretty much any following descriptor, and it would probably apply. So to help make it a little bit less intimidating for any new developers we have, or even for people who have been developing for a while, sometimes it's good to just learn some tips and tricks. Maybe you'll get a little something that you were unfamiliar with before to help speed up your process a little bit for that beginner prototyping phase, so you can smash through some of that busy work and then get into the detail work later, so you have a little bit of extra time for it. So yeah, that's going to be the main gist of today. So Chris, I kind of wanted to hand it.
The first descriptor should be a lot of fun.
It should
be the first one. And then the other one. So the first one is fun.
Whoa. The games are about fun.
Wait a second.
I think that's the goal. Could be wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. No.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, I wanted to hand it back over to you, Chris, and kind of let you maybe kick us off here. I know you've got so much stuff. Always.
Don't say so much. You're setting expectations. We've got some fun. It'll be good. We're gonna. All right. Yeah. Let's get it going.
Okay.
So hey everyone. Today I'm gonna have a reasonably freeform session. I'm keeping an eye on the Twitch chat to try and, like, if you've got questions and stuff, Tina's gonna grab choice things out of there as well. But that'll help me out a lot because I have a bunch of ideas for this and where we could be going. But questions and curiosities about certain things will really help. Now, I really wanted to run through just a bunch of general world-building tips, game jamming tips, things that are like easy saves that you may not expect, and kind of build from there. If we get time, there's some other areas I can fall into, which will be a little bit more advanced. But some of the stuff initially is going to be more fundamental. And then as we go on, I'll be kind of picking out just arbitrary blueprint nodes and things like that might be useful for folks. That said, I don't actually want to start with the project like pre-built or anything like that. I want to kind of do something that was reasonably clean. But before I even kind of go into that point, I actually want to flag something with folks as well that I think is easy to miss and helps out a lot of people, especially during game jams, where often you're dragging new Unreal Engine users in for the first time because you're like, hey, we have a team. Can you join us? And that's actually version sizing. And I know it sounds weird, but it's actually really useful for game jams where people are on potentially shaky connections. So let's click off the screen share on my side of things. All right, so the first thing I actually wanted to flag is this. Whichever build you're running in, whenever you first go to download the build, instead of just clicking the download button, click on this options button. And the reason I want to flag that is because by default, we include a whole heap of additional target platforms. And they're great. It's good to develop for those things. But if you're doing a game jam where you know you're exclusively developing for PC, there's no reason for you to download an additional 4 gig of Android, 3 gig of iOS, and 14.9 gig of Linux. So I just want to flag that if you are trying to put the best foot forward and kind of get some friends to join you on Unreal for the first time, it's great to remove 25 gig of download from their life to kind of put that foot forward a little faster. It's a small thing, but it'll help. All right, so we're going to go off and kick off a 5.3 project 2 days after it comes out. So what could possibly go wrong? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spin up a new project. We're going to create a third-person game, and I'm going to call this Unreal Livestream Jam. Okay. So, Unreal Livestream Jam. I'm going to include starter content just in case I want to blow up some tables or something. I know I'm going to get some judgment from chat about that, but let's do it. I've destroyed those tables a great many times. And we'll click Create. And then we chill while on the other screen it shows the loading. Sorry, I didn't think about that part. But it'll be done in a sec. We'll get there. In the meantime, like I said, I am a tech artist, so if any folks have questions relating to tech art or prototyping or anything like that, feel free to drop them in here. I'll do my best to answer those questions as we go about it. All right, so video games. Here we go. we're starting off, and I'm just running your stock standard boilerplates, third-person template. I wanted to start with this, even though I personally wouldn't start with this if I was making, a fresh project with a team, because there's a big difference between making a fresh project with a team and making a fresh project that proves a game concept that needs to be created in a very short period of time. And sometimes kind of starting off of a base like this is a good way to approach it. So I will be kind of building off of this. The first thing that I wanted to flag is this character that we have up and running. She is very useful. She's got a lot of functionality that's going on, but a lot of the functionality that she has going on is from the character movement component. So I'm going to open up her blueprints. Actually, I'll keep the one that we've got in the world. I'm going to open up her blueprint, and I'm going to drop this over. So within this blueprint, if you go to the character movement component, there's a lot of extra stuff that is built into characters by default that I strongly recommend you poke at. Feel free to just mess with all of these things, but the logic of a character that you've put into the world is so strongly dictated by just all of these variables, but there's a lot of stuff here that people aren't necessarily aware of. Now, one thing that I would suggest doing is to actually kind of set default on a couple of these values. By default, this character has kind of a nice floaty jump that feels pretty good, but when prototyping, I like all of my physics calculations to be correct. So I'm actually going to turn gravity scale back to 1. The awkward part is if you set gravity scale to 1 and then go back to it, it's now like a tremendous borderline, like Halo-esque jump, right? So it's if you want to kind of dial that back, you can go down to character movement jumping, and you can see here that this jump Z velocity. By the way, point of pride, I can actually use the word Z on an American live stream, and you all just have to roll with that. So this counts as the Australians
shutting
taking
it down.
over.
Yeah.
Dream button.
Right
Here we come. That's a bigger button in case of Z. So
I just smash it open and everything. It's terrible.
So we've got this jump set velocity. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drop that back down to 420. And if we go back to here, honestly, it's pretty similar as a jump. But now any physics calculations we do are gonna work a bit better. And I'll show you what I mean by that a little bit further on. So we've got that in play. That's good. The other one that actually is a little bit of a point of frustration for me. I was looking for a soft way to say that. Is this braking deceleration while falling? This value can also get in the way of it. Now, the reason I'm turning all of these things off or down is just because this stuff was all set up to make a regular character running around a regular world feel good. But if we're going to make something where characters are using jump pads and being launched around or things like that, which I assume we are because video games, then having some of these things that necessarily feel good can get in the way of some of the other areas that we would have. So I'm actually going to nuke that one as well. And it should still feel pretty good. Like, I think this is okay. I'd play this video game still. All right. So we've got that going on. The next thing for us to do is to start looking at, okay, how do we make this character do something more interesting? And the first of those things that's kind of tucked away inside of the character that folks don't know about is, because it's not in the character movement component, though you might expect it to be, is if you go to class defaults in any default, anything that's inheriting from the character class, and you go all the way down-ish, there it is. You actually see that we have this max jump count, jump max count. I bring this up because every game jam, I see a bunch of people doing stuff with double jump or triple jump or whatever kind of jump. And that's cool, but the number of times they've manually programmed that in, and I'm a bit like, if I type in the number 3 here and then hit play, jump, jump, jump. I'm sure you can hear the spacebar in the background. So, like, I can mash jump and it will just have a triple jump going and then cut me off. It's like, you're done, mate. So we can have that kind of sorted. Having doubles, triples, or whatever you want to do, and just kind of setting that through the character is a nice kind of quick, elegant way to kind of get that going. So it's kind of like a very simple little variable I wanted to flag with people because it makes me happy. The next thing that I wanted to kind of step through beyond that is also that beyond the max jump that we have within the character defaults, you'll also see that we have max hold time. And the reason for that is you actually can set up the jumps inside of a character component to be based on how long you held spacebar for. So the longer you hold it down, the bigger the jump will be, capping off at the max height that you've set up. So for certain kinds of games, that can be really useful as well. So I just wanted to highlight max hold time and max count, as it's just one of those things that I see getting manually written quite a lot. And that's fine if you've got a really particular implementation, but quite often the default character movement component is enough to get you going. All right, so that's that stuff kind of flagged. Next thing I wanted to move into was I'm going to do a couple of just fundamental little bits and pieces. I've had a question pop up in the chat: is can the extra jumps cancel out current Z velocity? So at the moment, those don't cancel out the Z velocity. They will increase it to the jump amount, but I don't think they add. I think they just set it back to the jump amount on the Z axis. You can, if you wanted to, grab the is falling check when you hit jump and potentially cancel out that linear velocity on the Z if you chose to. So it would be pretty easy to hook that up if you chose to. For the record, it's just on jump. When this jump is coming through before calling jump again, it would be an act of potentially hooking it in there. At that point, though, you're kind of getting into your own implementation again. So we're back where I started on the thing that I said you could skip. So yeah, if you do have a really particular kind of jump that you're after or something like that, that's where you do your own implementations. But I just wanted to flag that was there to get going. All right. So the things that I want to kind of go through, there's some really basic ones here, and I'm sure a lot of you will know them, but I'm running the stream, so you got to deal with that. So we're going to start off and we're going to create a blueprint that is going to be based on an actor. So this is going to be something that we can place in the world. Anything that's an actor just means it's a thing with a transform, essentially. So it's something to be placed in the world. I'm going to create an actor, and I'm going to call this BP teleport. Okay, and I'm starting kind of bare bones on this one because I'm not sure how many folks joining this session are fresh for Unreal and how many folks are long-term veterans. So we'll pop this here. Okay, so we're going to create a BP teleport. I just want to have an object that can put you somewhere in the world. I'm going to set this up with, obviously we want to have some sort of static mesh component as a base. So we want to have something that we can see that represents this teleport. So I'm going to call this base mesh. For the record, I strongly recommend never naming these things static mesh, even though that is often the first port of call for a lot of folks. And the reason I don't ever call them things like static mesh is it's very easy to get a little bit confused as to the phrase static mesh meaning multiple things, like the component versus the object, etc., etc. All right, so this is going to be my teleport. It's nice and fancy. We're going to give our teleport some sort of overlap collision. So we want this to be some sort of capsule. That feels good. It's kind of vibe. Check it to be, yeah, that's good. Nice and teleporty. Compile, save. Great. So we've got a teleport. For something like this teleport, I'm going to want to go through and set this to, there is overlap dynamic. There is also trigger. It's up to you which one you want to roll with and how you want a teleport to function. Overlap all is probably fine for what I'm doing. But I want to flag that whenever you're doing something like this, it's really useful to use, I personally find it really useful to use target actors for a lot of things. So we're going to quickly create the logic for this thing. I'm going to go event graph on begin overlap. So the second something overlaps this and starts doing its thing. If you were to type in the word teleport, oops. Every actor has the logic for teleport built into it. So we can just call teleport. and we're going to teleport the actor, it's going to say, where do you want to move to? One thing that I find really useful here is to just create a target actor that is going to be of type actor. So this is going to be something that we can place in the world. Make sure it's editable, which means that it'll be a little option in the details panel for us. And I'm going to drag that in. Now, one thing that's really useful here is you can right-click and do this function called validated gets. A validated get is the equivalent, if you're used to doing this, of doing this, except old and busted, new hotness. Okay, so generally running your validated gets is a slightly nicer way to do that. It's cleaner. Everyone will be like, damn, you're way cooler than I thought when they see you use validated gets. So make sure you do it. So we're going to make sure that what we're doing involves us actually having a destination to teleport to. We're going to want to teleport this target actor. So we're going to be like, hey, only teleport them if there is a target actor. We're going to get that. I might as well get the transform from it. Split the transform because I don't need the scale. And just plug in this location and rotation. And I'm going to be like, yes, you're valid. I see you. Okay, good. Drop you over to here. Begin. Check if we've got a place to teleport to. Do this. Okay? Now, compile, save, cool. Now, there are some things that we could be doing here that I will flag as potentially good ways to handle this stuff. It's not a bad idea when doing something like a teleport to have some safeties involved to show the person making the map that they've screwed up ahead of time. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a little bit. I like to do that a lot, especially in game jams where things are frantic and mistakes are easy to miss. But to begin with, let's get our teleport. F4 to go to my details panel, or you could click over here, but who's really got time for that? No one. And we want to teleport somewhere. So I could theoretically click on this thing, but then they're going to teleport into a cube. Now, what I like to use for these kinds of things is the target point actor. By the way, little thing that some people haven't caught on with is pretty much every menu in Unreal is searchable. So even if it doesn't look searchable, I can still type in what I want and it will find what I want. I know that seems silly, but I've run into literal like veteran devs who have been using this engine since like the before times. By which I mean, I guess UE4 from 2 years ago, but and they still don't know about these things. So wanted to flag it with people. So we've got this teleports. That's all well and good. I'm going to get you up and I'm going to say, hey, I want to shoot you over to a target point. Target point is the equivalent of a null object. If you ever do that in engine, I'm going to hit play. We're going to be good. We're going to teleport, and now we're over here. Okay, so just really simple, and it's not a bad idea as well to eventually set this up to have some sort of highlighting on construction script. Now, one thing that I wouldn't mind doing here is if I duplicate this object, so we've got like the good teleport and what will be the bad teleport. I'm gonna set this target actor to none, and I just want to flag that it's not a bad idea in game jams to just remember that everything's frantic, people are doing stuff really quickly, and you don't have as much time to have safety checks for features that you added as much as you would. So sometimes a tiny itty-bitty bit of work to get something that's showing that stuff is broken is a good idea. So there is in the engine content, I'm going to grab you. There is like a big X. Does anyone in the Twitch stream remember what the name of the big X is in the engine content? X doesn't work because it then finds every texture, so that'll just teach me for using a letter. There's a cross. Maybe it's called cross. Maybe UE4 means it's broken if I put the UE4 logo in. I'm going to give it 10 seconds more, and then I'm going to fall back on the UE4 logo. I'm checking on this Twitch chat. No one's helping me. No one's saving me. No one's got my back.
You're in this on your own.
Yeah, I'm in this on my own. All right, hang on, we're gonna get there. I forgot how much content is in the engine. You know what? Hang on, we're gonna do this way.
Worry. It'll come like 45 seconds after you decide the whatever.
Yeah. Hey, there it is. It's called bad. I love how explicit that is. All right, so bad. All right, so we're just going to put our bad X here, okay? And the reason I'm going to do that bad is I'm going to go... So I'm going to set this up such that just in my construction script, all I'm going to do is get the billboard, and I'm going to set the visibility of that depending on the target actor. We're going to get it, and I'm going to get a validated get. And all I'm going to do is in the construction script, we're going to say, if you have a target actor, then I want this to be what's the word I'm after here? I want this to be like only visible is the word I'm after in to find the option that I want here. I want this to be visible. Hidden in game is always checked, but I want visible to be false if it is valid. Yeah, good. So I'm going to set the visibility. Sorry, folks. I can see the thing is visible. What? I swear I typed in the word visible. You all saw me write that, right? Anyway, whatever.
Can confirm.
Can confirm. Thank you. You know, I can even do this, actually. I can get, if you want to be real tricky, you can get one of these and set the visibility to that. That's what we call a pro gamer move right there. All right, so we've got that going. Shift-D to align them left. Slightly nicer. Now, if this is valid... Oh, no, that's the exact opposite of what I want, isn't it? Sorry, folks. Not. Okay, good. All right, cool. Only reason I've done that is now that anytime any of these jump pads... any of these jump pads doesn't have a target, it's a lot easier and quicker for me to see that that's a broken jump pad and I should feel bad about that and maybe think about fixing the jump pads in my life. Okay, so like I said, just kind of having that set up is a good move. So I'm going to save you, move on with my life. But that's kind of the basics of us. I just wanted to run through teleports and kind of safeties on these things and why that's useful and kind of get some of those good practices in. Just because when you're setting up a big level, it's nice to not to not have those issues. The next one I wanted to jump into is movements within the world. So it's really commonplace for us to be like, hey, I have a cube and I'm going to drop this cube in. I'm going to set it to movable because we should. And a lot of people, when they're setting up like movers in their world, are going to do things like they're going to go to sequence, right? They're going to say, hey, I want to have some sort of sequence in the world that allows me to move you around. So I'm going to create a level sequence that's going to be called like block in the main level. And this block in the main level, you know, I might get this and then add a track, drop this thing in, and just add a bunch of keyframes. We want it to start there, we want it to end there, and I want this to maybe move up to here over time. This is why we can't have those things. There we go. Keyframing. Beautiful.
This specifically.
All right, so we could do this, right? And like, that's fine. But that doesn't scale. In fact, it scales terribly. Like it's actively, what's the opposite of scaling? I guess it's just like scaling downwards below 1. So that doesn't work. Anyway, there's something there. So the reason this doesn't work is just because if I wanted to have 47 of those blocks that are all offset, very quickly that becomes, I think the technical term is janky, and we don't want to have that, right? You know, we want this to feel like something that we can really like work with in a better way. And I could hit autoplay, jump into the game, and it'll do its thing. And yeah, we can then still jump on top of it. Go back to the end. I didn't set it to loop. But how do we set up something like that in a way that's a little bit more interesting and a little bit more, what's the word that I'm after? Good. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to get rid of the texture, I'm going to content, and I'm going to right-click, we're going to create a new blueprint, and I'm going to create a new actor, once again, same old, and I'm going to call this BP Simple Mover. Okay? Actually, before I do the Simple Mover, I'm going to show you the next quickest way, but the less friendly way. I can add a cube to the world, I can set it to movable, and in the same way that we have a ability to finish sentences, character movement component, we can also add a interp movement component. Okay, so interp2 movement component is literally a movement component whose entire job is to move it between two locations over a set amount of time. So if I was to set that to like 1,000 on the z-axis, at this point I'm doing it intentionally, 1,000 on the z-axis, and then tell it to ping pong, when I hit go, oh, that was weird. When I hit go, it's automatically going to move between those two locations, okay? Which is kind of nice. We can kind of see what it's going to be doing. I think that's really useful, but it's also a little bit unwieldy to set up, because when I start wanting to deal with control locations, like setting these as like numbers when you can't visualize them and stuff is a little bit it's a little bit frustrating, I guess. You know, like I can't really see what's going on. So I'm going to go back to the simple mover class that we were creating a moment ago. I'm going to open that up. Sorry, give me one moment. Asset editor open. Okay, this will now open every asset that I open in the main menu, in theory. Because I keep opening blueprints and they're firing up on my other screen, my much grander screen. All right, so we've got this going on. I'm going to add a static mesh component that's going to represent the moving object, and I'm going to call this like platform mesh. I'm going to set all of this up in the construction script because I really want this to basically be set up in the defaults. So I'm going to go construction script, get my platform mesh, and we're going to set the static mesh, when I spell the word static correctly, to something that is promoted to a variable. So I'm going to call this like mover mesh. And now if that's set up and we set it to cube, sure, shape cube. We can now see that that's doing its thing. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add a interp2 movement component. And now this is now functionally identical to the other thing that we created. If I was to drop this in, this and this are identical. But what I want to do instead this time is in my simple mover, I'm going to override the control points that are in the interp2 movement. So I'm going to get the control points that are there. And after we've got these control points, I'm going to promote this to a variable that is called control points. And I'm going to call it something else just so we never confuse them elsewhere, so like mover control points. And the reason I've done that is if this is a asset variable, oh, sorry, I forgot to expose mover mesh and that. If I add this, a cool thing that happens is when you add them as variables of the asset, it actually gives you this little piece here that allows me to say, hey, I actually want to click on this one and say, I want you to move from here to here. At which point I want to add another one after that and move it from here to here. Okay, so I can now see it's got here, here, and here. And we can kind of like set that stuff up however we need to. But now if I was to hit play, oh wait, it did the thing already. Hang on. It did it in 1 second. That's what I get for no longer having Unreal Tournament 99 Twitch reflexes. Let's set you to 5 seconds, and let's set you to ping pong. I should probably set this stuff up to what's the word that I'm after? To properly. Sorry, folks. It's 9:30. I'm still waking up. To have those options available in the default panel as well, which would be good practice. But now if I set that up, you've now got this one over here, which is going to move between those points. I thought I could be a cool kid and jump between them.
I believe in you. You can do this.
I don't.
Third time. Third time's the charm.
All right. Third time's charm.
Oh, no.
Right.
You did. You landed for a second. It counts.
Yeah, thanks. I feel like you just gave me like a participation ribbon, but that's fine. At least you tried. Thanks. Okay, so I wanted to flag that though, that it's nice having these things in here. Another set that you could do if you wanted to, that's really like an elegant approach to these kind of movers, just again for just safety reasons, is I can go through, and now that we've got all those control points set, I could get the control points and run a for loop and say, hey, for every for loop that we can see, I want to add a static mesh component. And this static mesh component is going to be set the static mesh to the mover mesh. By the way, in case anyone is unaware of it, Shift D aligns right, Shift A aligns left, Shift S aligns bottom, and Shift W aligns top. Sorry, because I'm using a lot of hotkeys, and I'm trying to stay on top of the hotkeys that I'm using as I go, so people know what's up. All right, so that'll add.
One of the favorite things about
that'll add.
Learn something new.
Yeah, it's really easy to accidentally get caught up in that. So I'm going to set the relative transform. We're going to split that, and I'm going to split this. I'm going to get the position and just plug that straight in. And what that's going to do now is add a cube that I can see at each of the control position locations. So that actually gives me a little bit of a preview of what's coming up. I'm going to get this and turn off collision so that when we have collision disabled, it's no longer a thing that we care about in any capacity. I'm also going to do my final piece of resistance, which is to create a material that I'm going to call M_holographic. All right, and now M_holographics is going to be our really simple way of creating like a little bit of an outline shader that is just going to show where these things will go and making us feel like we're making a real game. So if I get a Fresnel, and it's pronounced Fresnel, not Fresnel, otherwise you can leave. I'm going to get this Fresnel, and I'm going to preview it. This is what we see. I'm going to multiply that by a sine wave, specifically a remapped sine wave. The reason I use a remapped one is that a regular sine wave goes between -1 and 1, but the remapped node automatically goes between 0 and 1, which, if I preview it, gives me like a nice... Okay, you should have definitely done the thing that I just said. Oh, sorry, I didn't plug in the time node. An amateur. All right, so I've got this. It's now flashing. If I plug those two in and I connect you to opacity, I set you to translucent. Where am I going? Blend mode. I swear I know how to do my job sometimes. And then finally, let's set this up to be red. Yeah, good. All right, great. So all we've done here, just as a really quick thing, again, this just goes back to my put some safeties on some of these things, is it'll make you a much happier person when everything is chaotic at the end. And so M holographic, compile. Now what this will do now is we can now see that we've got these kind of just like reference cubes that I can see. In theory, I probably should have remapped this to be between like 0.5 and 1, so it's just kind of pulsing a little bit, and I probably want to divide the time by like 5, so it's a slow pulse. Ultimately, though, what we get is a little like reference cube that we can see whenever we're moving these things around. And if I go to the static mesh component of the ones that we add, what I can do is I can just turn off the hidden in-game, turn on the hidden in-game checkbox. And what that means is whenever I'm in editor mode, we can see it, and whenever I'm not in editor mode, we can't see it. Okay? Someone wrote Fresednol, and that is an act of aggression, I think. I'm being targeted. So, as I said, like having these little previews to me is really nice, because now when I set this up as a thing, and I'm like, hey, this control point's over here, this one is going to be lined up to here, and this one over here is the initial control point, so it can just be where it is. But that's always going to, that just makes a lot easier to me when you're kind of laying out objects, all right? So, like I said, I really wanted folks to just to think about adding some safeties here makes less time fiddly. If you're going to have 50 or 100 movers going on inside your project, it's a good idea to just have some previs on these things. And I just wanted to get folks kind of thinking about that. Hopefully that's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do something that's not Blueprint for a little bit. Oh, so one thing I didn't show was just simply because of how we set that up, I can have the same moving system, but like hard mode. And if I type in the word sphere, we grab one of them. Yeah, the actual thing has no material because I grabbed the wrong sphere. Definitely not sky sphere. Shape sphere. That'll still give me the holographic preview of that mesh, and it'll still give me the regular one over here with its control around it. Okay. So, like I said, that's just a bit friendlier. So, the next thing for us to go through is to let's do prototyping stuff in the world. All right. So a lot of people often kind of grab stuff when they're building things, and they're like, "All right, I need a cube, and then I need another cube, and I'm gonna compress that down to here, and then I want a ramp, so I guess I'm gonna put this here." And maybe they're really crafty, right? Like maybe they use Alt middle mouse to put a temporary pivot point at a location, which is a feature that I'm sure you all knew about, to like create a ramp. But this is good in some situations and bad in other situations. I wanted to flag some of the modeling tools, which are really coming along. And sorry, I hit Shift 5 to go to this. You can click here and then select it. But if you do that every day of your life and you work in Unreal for 365 days, you've just lost 700 seconds of your life. So that's a coffee break. All right, so we've got this. I'm going to go modeling mode, and I'm actually going to go cube grid. Cube grid is one of my favorite things for quick and simple prototyping. If I have cube grid on, quick thing for cube grid, make sure nothing is selected, because if something is selected, it'll modify that. If nothing is selected, you can just be like, look, I want to have a big space over here. I can use control drag to drag it up. I want to get you over here, pull you out. And then what we're going to do is pull you out a bit further, actually, but I want to get some like pillars going on. Pull you down as well. Good. Sorry, I didn't grab you. You can use Shift E and Shift Q to change the grid size. You can also go ahead and do stuff like, if I was to get this and then hit Z and then grab that, I can then kind of pull this out.
I make it tally at this point.
Yeah. Ding, ding. I actually, my wage is based on how many times I say Z. I can bring this over to here and then be here and then be like, grab them, grab there. And like, I don't know about you, but that's just really quick. The other thing is I can carve holes in it, right? So I can kind of get this and be like, hey, what if this had a big old hole in it? And just kind of carve those holes, right? So I can kind of boolean into that space for whatever reason that I need to. Now, it won't initially, what you're previewing is going to be based on direct lighting, not lumen. So I'll show you what that looks like just for a second, just so we'll create like an ugly version of this. Give me a sec, sorry folks. Right. Yeah, good. I'll put a wall here as well. For the record, if I actually wanted to do what I just did, but I hadn't thought about it, a nice way to approach that is you can make a box, and then I could select the interior of the box, hit Shift Q to lower the level, which puts it there, and then I can actually lower that from within inside of it, and then boolean a hole into it. And anyway, so this lighting seems like maybe it's okay, but you're just thinking to like old Unreal Engine 4 ye old lighting systems, so get with it. Click accept and give it a sec, and now Lumen will kick in and do its thing. But it won't do it until you're kind of finished. So just wanted to flag that. Now this will modify whatever mesh you have selected. It's up to you. It's whether you want to have that going on, but it's useful to just to be aware of. Other things that I want people to be aware of is I want folks to know about transforming on axes. So if I ever had this thing and I was building a capture the flag map or something like that, actually these days if I was building a CTF map, I'd probably use it with data layers and level instances, because then I could duplicate. That's a cool idea. Anyway, in the olden days, what I would have done is grabbing this and duplicating it. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of going transform and then picking an axis to mirror something on, and that being a really quick way to be like, hey, we've got this piece. And like, I know you can type in the scale over here, but if this was rotated at a weird angle for whatever reason, like if I had a level that was looking like this, it would be nice to get that. And when I tell it to rotate on, we did the y-axis next time. Which axis do you think we should use, Tina? That was a setup. You're not going to say it? Fine, z-axis. It'll then duplicate
You
it.
can't make me. I refuse.
But we can kind of flip it, and it will kind of keep those rotations accordingly. It's a little thing, but it is kind of useful to kind of have that duplicated out, and it's a nice way to work, in my opinion. I just did Z instead of Y. So, like I said, kind of just be aware of the transform there stuff. It's really who's Z Chris? I never heard of him. The final thing I want to flag that this can get you into trouble if you have a sky sphere, so hide it first. But Control Alt. Some people aren't aware of that. Using Control Alt to just marquee select objects. So if I want to grab all of those things, it can get you into trouble with landscapes as well. So hiding landscapes as appropriate is not the worst idea. But yeah, all right. So we've gone through those things. The last little bit of that I want to go into is, the last little bit of that I want to go into is booleans. So if I was to get this piece, let's say we have something like, let me get a nice looking cylinder, or I don't know, I need some sort of content. This cylinder will do. And we embiggen it. Nope, went the wrong way. Yeah, it's a cromulent word. By the way, actually, here's one that you may not know of. You don't have to click on this. You can just hold down Control and left click, and that will stop you from having to click on the axes. A cool thing of that is Control left click is the x-axis, Control right is the y-axis, and Control left and right at the same time is wow.
Off axis.
It looks like we've broken that.
Have we?
Okay, we broke that in 5.3. I gotta make a bug report. Normally,
It was
Control both click
specifically so
instead.
you couldn't say it again.
But now I
That
feel
was
like
why.
I'm being
Being
okay.
punked live.
Anyway, so anyway, if you click on this object and then click on this object, actually I'm going to overlap them immediately so you can see. So you can click on one, Control click on the other, and then you go down to, I want to say mesh. It's not mesh, model, boolean. Yeah, so model and then boolean. It will actually subtract one model from the other. So you can see here that as I move this around, it's subtracting that cylinder. Again, really useful for if you're doing things like doorways or cutaways, or you want to put a window in a mesh that already exists. One thing that's useful here is you can tell it what to output to. So you can say, I want you to save yourself into a new mesh, or I want you to, output into a new mesh, or I want you to output into one of those existing objects so that it saves out that result as that object. So if you know you're never keeping that wall as it was always going to be ruined, you can save it back into that wall and it's good. Okay? So we've got that. And if I wanted to, I could make that a new object. I'm going to click accept, and that will now carve it out. So you can now see that this here is this Boolean mesh, whereas this over here is my cube grid output. Okay? So it has created a new mesh for it. However, if I was to undo what I just did, and once again do a Boolean, but this time I was to write it to the first input object, it'll now Boolean all of these things over here because all of these were duplicates of the other one, right? So it's important to know about that. The other thing that I want to flag is if I do that Boolean, and instead of saving it to an object, I save it to cancel. Sorry. you and you, boolean, new object, there it is. Write to a new object and then set it to a dynamic mesh. And this time click accept. This will now be a mesh that does not exist in the editor. So this is purely a mesh that exists as a dynamic mesh component. And what that means is this is a 3D object that we can now use purely inside of this space. Now the downside is that it won't have lumen. See, this is kind of bright in here. Dynamic meshes don't have lumen support right now. But having this as a mesh does mean that I could boolean something and then use that to kind of create other effects. I feel like I wasn't very clear on that just then, so I'm going to give you one last quick example of this before I move into something more interesting. But if I was to get a... All right, let's get a sphere, for instance. We're going to get a big sphere, and I'm going to run a displacement on the sphere. So just get something like this, just as an example. Yeah, that'll work. I'm going to set this to be, save it out as a mesh. Sorry, that was a good trick. Displace. I want to... it's not letting me do it because it's grabbing an existing mesh. That's fine. We can duplicate the existing mesh. Duplicate got put into a spot that I wouldn't have expected it to, and now I can't find it anymore. And I feel like, there it is, duplicate. Duplicate as a dynamic mesh. Cool. So this is now a dynamic mesh component. I'm going to go to deform, and I'm going to displace this dynamic mesh component. But now a cool thing is I can actually kind of use this as a brush. Like I could have deformed this to look like tiles or something like that. But now if I was to click this and then click this and then go to Boolean, it's now going to carve out that kind of like broken, ripped up shape into it for me. And it's pretty quick to iterate, even though that's reasonably high poly. So having something like that is actually a really cool way to add like a deformation brush almost that you're using for like really specific kinds of destruction or brickwork or something like that. So don't be afraid to create a dynamic brush and save the dynamic brush as kind of like a proxy tool for what you want to do. Someone said you can use it for dynamic destruction. I would still recommend using Chaos and the geometry collections for stuff like that. But this is really good for the kind of destruction that is the, here's what happened earlier kind of destruction, okay? You know what I mean? Like if you rock up and you wanted a bunch of broken looking pillars, but the marketplace asset you grabbed or the asset that your artist gave you was only regular pretty looking pillars, this is a good way to mess up those pillars in ways that are then usable as just a generic static mesh asset. All right. I think it's just because I haven't had breakfast, but like looking at that just kind of makes me hungry. It kind of looks like there's been like a big bite taken out of this thing, but that could be me. All right, so we've got that going on. Also, I realize that this session has live captions, and my apologies for speaking so quickly, because I feel sorry for whoever that person is handling that, or it might be an algorithm. Who knows? I don't know how that system works. All right, so we've got this in. I wanted to show you that, and now I have, so let's move on with our lives. Let's do something else. Okay, the next one that I think would be good to touch on is calculating velocities for jump pads. This is actually a fun one. Jump pads are super common in game prototypes. I'm going to duplicate my teleport and call this one BP underscore jump pad. The reason I'm doing that is if you think about it, a jump pad is basically a teleport, but it takes time to get there. And I'm going to, how's that for logic? Let's roll with it. I'm going to get rid of this teleport here function. And instead what I'm going to do is jump pads can only be used by people. So I'm going to get the actor that steps on it, and I'm going to cast it to a character. Okay. Oh, by the way, to pick up the wire like that, you hold down Control, and that lets you do it. Also, another thing to note is if you hit Shift-Delete on a node, it will reattach the pins on either side of it. So if I ever get rid of a node, but I kind of still wanted to kind of keep that in-between connection, Shift delete is where it's at for those kind of things. Okay. Cool. Good. Great. Let's go. So the next thing that I've done is, as a character, whenever you want to launch a character, you just use the function called launch character. It's really well named. I'm going to get this launch character. I'm going to set this up, and now we need a launch velocity. Now, there's one version of you that is probably like, all right, so I guess I type in a number there, and that will be my jump pad. To put you here, I'm going to change the color of these jump pads actually before I continue, just so I don't mix these up. Pick this basic floor and move on. All right, good. So that's my jump pad. And now that I've added that, I can touch it. I did not connect something. That's correct. That's correct. All right, so at times like this, what we do is hit F9. Oops. All right, I'm hitting the thing. It's a third-person character that's hitting the thing. Oh, I didn't set a thing. My own validation rules have gotten in the way. Voiced by my own petard. All right, I'm going to pop this down here for a second. All right.
Honestly, you found that way faster than I would have.
Because of F9. It's the magic of F9. All right, so we can see that works. But let's say we had somewhere specific that we wanted you to end up. So I'm going to duplicate, we've made this city over here, let's use it, right? So I'm going to create a target, target point, and I'm going to drop that target over here. You can see that this is going to be our landing point, all right? So this is going to fire over there. I'm going to call this jump pad target, just so I remember in the outliner what it's called. And now that that's there, I'm going to fire this at jump pad target. But how do we hit that is the question. And this is one of those things that requires like linear braking and stuff to be default character stuff. But there's a really cool function in Unreal that most people don't know about, which is called suggest projectile velocity. You have three of them. You have suggest projectile velocity custom arc, and suggest projectile velocity moving target, which in my opinion is the coolest, and it's reasonably new, so no one seems to know about it yet. What we're going to do here is I'm going to use custom arc. Now the difference between these three, actually I might as well explain this because I think this is useful for people to know. This was very clearly set to like fire grenades at stuff, which I'm guessing is why it's called this. But basically how they work is this projectile velocity is what direction, based on a launch speed, do we fire something at to drop it onto an object. So in that situation, it's kind of like, I know the projectile is coming out of the turret at 5,000 units per second. Therefore, what angle does 5,000 units need to be fired at to land on the target? Custom arc says, given an arc shape, which is the param here, this arc param, where 0.5 is like a half arc, and 1 is like a full arc, and 0 is a straight line. To get between these positions, what's the general velocity we need to fire at? General velocity. And then the last one is moving target, which is based on a location and a target actor, but also a target location offset, which is like where it's going for. You can then say, hey, if this object's here right now and it's about to be here, how do we fire it based on its current speed to hit it over this amount of time? That's cool. Custom arc is the friendliest, easiest one to use. So I suggest that. It's what the cool kids use. So we'll sell it that way. So I'm going to say, hey, the position that we start at is my position, the character. The position that we end at is the target actor's position. And the velocity that it shoots out is this one. And I want to launch the character. Now, the last thing that I strongly recommend you do is these checkboxes if I have launch character normally and I run into a checkbox, but I run into a something that's launching me, it adds the launch velocity to my velocity. So if you think about it, if I was falling and then it launched me, my fall velocity would kind of nullify the upwards velocity of the jump pad, which isn't ever what you want. What you actually want is to check these, and what this says is basically remove the existing velocity that they've got and just hard set it to the X, Y, and Z that's been plugged in here. Now, the result of that is that when I go to here and I hit play and I'm like, okay, I have braking turned on, so I landed in the right place. I just mistakes were made.
This is purposeful.
Yeah, let's go with that. I mean, let's do it this way, right? Like, here it goes. So the target mark is there, and Shift Escape brought me back here. Yeah, that was pretty close. Like, yeah, I landed like that, right? So, okay, a teeny bit of I'm looking at the chat, and there's always that one person who corrects this, someone else calling it Twitter to X, and every time I wince. Right.
Formerly known as Twitter.
Formerly known as Twitter. Yeah, I'm still not ready for that. All right. So, like I said, having that kind of a setup is really useful. That function in particular has been the crux of a mini game jam that I've had. So I like to make sure people are aware of that. Cool. All right, video games. So I guess the next thing that we want to touch on that front, we've gone through. Let's think of what we've gone through. We've gone through teleport, general touch stuff, validation of assets to make sure that we've got errors that we can see. We want to make sure that we've got. Actually, yeah, I got a great one. This is good. What we might want to do is, now awkwardly, this level has been developed with its corner on 0, 0, which not ideal, but let's pretend we were making a 2D game that was like a side-scrolling game. I'm going to get rid of all those, and I'm going to open the blueprint for the character. Thing that I'd like to flag with people is setting this up to be a side-scrolling character is about 30 seconds of work if you're not explaining it on Twitch. Maybe 90 seconds if you are. So if you get this character movement, there's actually a function all the way down here that allows you to call constrain to plane, planar movement. So constrain to plane, and characters facing that way, so I'm going to constrain them to the y-axis. At which point, if I was to hit play, I can no longer run in those directions, right? We've just created something that is in there, so I'm stuck only moving in these directions, and even that teleport won't launch me off of my axes. This is my life now, okay? So I can see that that's working, but the other thing that I can do with constraint to plane is I can grab my camera, which is camera boom, and I can disable pawn control rotation. And a useful thing that we can do is, because I constrained it to the world axes, I can actually get my camera boom, and under rotation here, I can actually set this rotation of the component to be the world rotation rather than the active rotation. It's pretty rare that you want to do that, but in this case, what that's going to result in is, if I hit play, oops, I forgot to actually rotate the camera. We've now kind of got our side camera going on here. I'm going to now do one last little bit, which is I'm going to go to my event graph, and I'm going to... This is getting my control rotation and then the right vector of my control rotation to move me right. Instead of my control rotation, I'm going to just get the camera rotation. So get the world rotation of that. Oh, that was add. Get rotation. Give me something. On honestly, it's fine for me to just plug you straight in. You should be. I want to get that rotation, and I want to get the right vector, not the wrong one.
Real quick, there's a question here from the YouTube chat. They're wondering if you can clamp that constraint. Like if you were making a game with like Crash Bandicoot mechanics, for example, if you could use a constraint to allow a limited amount of time on the y-axis.
A limited amount of time on the y-axis. You can't by default. That's a cool question. You can't by default. It would not be super hard. You wouldn't use our inbuilt one immediately for that, or you would override our character movement component to do it. Either would be fine approaches. If I wanted like Crash Bandicoot, part of me would actually consider using the movement input to bring them back onto the spline. But there's like a bunch of different ways to solve that problem, so I got to think about what the nicest way to do that would be. But what I just did is we've now got left and right are actually doing rightward movement. Give this some time. Oh, okay. All right, just fine. Trashed. Okay, so kind of setting that up is useful though. I just I want to also go through another element of this. I'm gonna move this player start over to here. Okay, good. That'll work. So what I've done here is we can see this camera is doing some pretty nasty stuff. Like, see, it's kind of like flicking around and flicking back and stuff. If you're ever doing a 2D game, because you're so carefully monitoring where this stuff is already, I would strongly consider going to camera movement. And you got two ways you can do this. You can either turn off camera collision in the camera boom. So you can either turn off the camera collision, or you could manually set the camera channels on a bunch of stuff, which is probably safer. But now what this will do is those things are no longer going to get in the way of a 2D camera, and we can kind of keep that going. Problem is if you ever allow stuff to be on the camera path, you're going to get stuff like that, which isn't going to feel great. But that's okay. I was about to set up the like length, I think it is. It's either length or arm length. Okay, it's 800. So this is a quick way for me to kind of set that up. I've really set this up in the like, oh hey, let me show you this amazing feature right here that you can like, it's fair, it's fair. Let me get rid of this box, or at least get on down. I don't know why I'm keeping it. I feel like I'm obligated to keep some of what was here before. So good. We've now got that kind of going on. The next thing that I think would be really good here is, see how when I move back and forth, the camera is like rigidly attached to where we are. That feels gross. And honestly, this is like one of the easiest ways to just make your game feel like it's not a game jam game, which is literally just enable camera lag. And I can set the lag speed, for instance, to something like 5. And now what happens is when I pull here, the camera catches up. Look at that.
I love that.
Cinematic. So next gen.
I love seeing things that would take
just
so long on their own, just being like 2 clicks, and you're just like, and you're done. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. Well, it's like, oh, okay, cool. So, like I said, the camera lag function is just really useful. There's also rotational lag as well, if you're ever going to have it spinning around the character for some reason, or the character able to spin it. And you can set up max distances as well. So I could have a really low speed, for instance, but a max distance of 500. And what that means is my low speed means that I can like outrun the camera, but once it hits 500 units away, I will clamp to that position. So if I was trying to make a, can I? Someone just brought it up in the Twitch chat. Can I enter my my demo to the game jam? Is that exciting?
We'll need an
You
alias.
just do it under a different name? Yeah. So we don't know.
Yeah. Moderately spammable. No one will catch that guy. Anyway, what we've got here is like it clamps it, And like this might actually be a really good mechanic if you had a 2D game that was like a horror game, for instance, where you actually wanted to force them to slow down for some of these things. Then having that slow catch up to kind of see the world might be a good way to approach that problem. You know what I mean? So having that kind of catch up time, I think, is really good. I would recommend playing with these camera settings because like I've done nothing. You know what I mean? Like I changed like one checkbox and 2 numbers. And like to me, that feels like it would be really good for certain games. And someone would play this game and go like, "Wow, I really love the camera setup." And you'd be like, "Yeah, I put a lot of work into it," which
it's one of those
would be a lie.
That goes a long way. Like I think oftentimes people get stuck on like the tiny details that don't really matter. That's a small detail that does. Like it really helps the feel of it, and it takes a second.
Yeah, 100%. I actually think one of the first things you should do when you're getting character movement together, I genuinely think getting camera movement together at the same time is really, really important, and really, really has a good payoff. So that's good. We've done that now. I wanted to make sure we'd kind of step through some of those things. We've kind of gone through general movers, duplication, 2D stuff, teleports, jump pads. I think we should probably move into some fun world building stuff, I guess. That would be good.
Yeah.
A question came up of, can you do shift focusing? So if you want to do shift focusing, like if you have 2 players, you can do that. Literally, there's a node in Unreal that's called like set blend target. Set view target? Again, it's not in the pawn this way. It's like view target with blend, I want to say. Set view target with blend, yeah. Cool. So this you can call on a player controller, and if you plug this into the next player or camera or whatever it's going to be, it will interpolate the camera from your location, especially if you click lock outgoing, from your location to another location. So if I I might as well just go down that rabbit hole just to show you what I mean. If we had like, I don't know, a game where as I run through, I possess multiple people, which I guess could be a game. Let's go ahead and add you to here. And I'm going to add a... This was not intended to be in this demo, by the way, so apologies if I'm... Give me... it's called a trigger. Yeah, good. I'm going to add a trigger sphere. Yeah, video games, why not? All right, so in theory, if we have this trigger, I could set up something in the level blueprint where I'm going to get a overlap event for this trigger, collision on begin overlap. So when the trigger is overlapped, I want to get the reference to you. The other actor, which is the thing doing the overlapping, I want to cast that to a character, and that would now put me in there. I would now call, I think this will work. I would probably call get player controller. Sorry, get controller. And I would cast that to a player controller, which now says, hey, find their brain and see if their brain is a person. After I've got that, I would call view target with blend, and I would set that view target with blend to blend into this character, the blend time of like 5 seconds. I'm not going to do the unpossess yet, just see if that works. And now it's blending to this person's camera. But I'm still controlling this guy at the moment. That's fine. All I would do is I would lock the outgoing, and then I would get this character. I can't remember if I have to call unpossess and then possess. Like, it's probably good for me to call unpossess first, just in case, but I suspect possess is going to just work TM. Let's check. So if I plug you into you, we've now got a situation where I've got this like 2D person kind of running along. Oh, okay. So I might want to. That works. What I might do is when we call possess, that is immediately taking control of the camera. You can stop taking control of the camera by, I think it's auto activate. Yeah, real quick, I want to see if that at least works. No, it didn't. Auto activate was definitely not the right thing. Oh, you know what it might be? It might be that I need to unpossess, do the blends. So sorry, you've really thrown me down the rabbit hole, but now I feel like I'm compelled to finish this.
We're here. We came this far. We can't just.
Yeah, we've come this far.
I live my life
There
in
you go.
the sun.
And now, all right. So the other guys didn't stop running. I blame that on whoever set up their animation blueprint, not me. But I'm now able to control this person. But like, so now I can kind of switch between those characters. And a fun part of what actually happened there was it took 5 seconds to catch up, which meant that I kind of had that little bit of drift as we were going, which I thought felt pretty nice. So yeah, you know, as I said, kind of setting up something like that might be a fun. Like you can set up a 2D game where you actually have this axis, but it's about moving between puzzles that are going this way, like handing a baton or something. I don't know, but if any of you make that for your game jam, let me know. Cool. So we've got that. We've had the camera rework. Yeah, have we had any questions pop up on the YouTube side of stuff? I'm only looking at the Twitch one at the moment. But I can kind of fire ahead with other stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, I've been picking up the ones that are kind of focusing on what you've been chatting about. But
you can just say your favorites. It's fine. You can say it's your. So I just want everyone to know if you haven't been picked up by Tina. Yeah, you know.
No.
Everyone's my favorite. That's like when you get like a parent saying, "I love you all equally," and you're like, "I don't know, that one kind of sucks."
No.
All right, so I'm gonna create a new level and do some world building stuff for a little bit. Oh god! All right, I'm starting to wake up. All right, so. I do want to flag for game jams. I love the open world logic that's been added to UE5. I think it's going in a really great direction. But for a lot of game jams, there's a good chance you don't need it. So I want to flag with people that if you're doing like a small 2D or 3D type of but small environment and stuff, and you don't need open world environments, it's not the worst idea for you to consider using basic or empty level. By the way, I love that our two names are either open world or basic. Like it almost feels like slander, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, you're going to use the basic one. But it does mean that you have less overhead of the open world system. And like there's no performance overhead. It's just kind of like knowing that you need to manage those kind of things, especially if you have new users and they're not used to like streaming in or streaming out world partition and those kind of things. That said, I am giving a talk on large open worlds at Unreal Fest, which you should all totally go along to. So I'm going to go ahead and create a empty level. Quick thing, if you're ever making a new level, you're probably used to going like, oh, I'm going to need a directional light. I'm going to need these things. I keep clicking here. I'm going to need, a directional light, and I'm going to drag all them in. Don't do that. That takes forever, and no one has time for it. So I want you to go Window, Environment Light Mixer. Notable because it's not Light Mixer, which awkwardly has the same name with one, 3-letter difference at the start. But yeah. Environment Light Mixer, yeah, I know it. It's pain. Environment Light Mixer works like this. It lets you mash left click to add all of the lights that you need for your scene. So I can be like, hey, I need a height fog, and I need a atmospheric light, and I need a sky atmosphere, and I need clouds, and I need a skylight. And it'll just it's just like literally just like mash left click to set up your basic light environment, and everyone's going to be happy for it. So do that. Yeah. It also gives you those options in minimal, normal, and normal advanced. So actually, if you scroll down, I can see all my skylight stuff that I probably care about, and sky atmosphere that I probably care about, and volumetric clouds that I probably care about, but not like the rest of it. So it's not a bad approach to kind of doing that. It's like to setting up the scene that way, because it's just there, right? And normal gives me more information, and normal advanced, whoopsie, there we go. Normal advanced lets me get all of the information in one big old thing. The only thing that isn't on by default that personally I think you should do is it's not a bad idea to... Oh, hey, that's new. All right, this used to be off by default. 5.3. What a concept. Okay, so we've got real-time capture is not on by default in 5.1, maybe 5.2. I'm like doubting myself, but I'm pretty confident it wasn't on in 5.2 either. But that should just give you good lighting out of the box. Yeah. So I'm going to close that window down and not return to it. This is in play. Let's go ahead and go Shift 2 to open up landscape mode like a pro. I'm going to click Create and make myself a world. If you're doing stuff on a landscape that's kind of easy to wrangle, like this is a reasonably small landscape, a couple of things I want to run through. I'm going to create a new layer to do it in here. So a couple of things I want to run through. Everyone's aware of regular painting modes that are in there. Like we're all familiar with sculpt and how that works. But here's some things that I don't see getting handled particularly frequently. Let's say you had built like a cliffy area that was starting to look okay. You're kind of like, the good vibes. I'm going to use the flatten tool to like pull out some little cliff facey bits along the way. Kind of get some of that little terracing going on. Yeah, good. Ship it. Having this set up, I want to just flag a couple of things that are actually surprisingly useful tools. The first of those is select. So if I'm modifying my landscape and I know I only want to touch this hill here, I can use the select brush and go back to sculpt. And now when I have the sculpt brush, painting here, oops, sorry, there's an option. Oh. It's a negative mask, that's why. I was like, why is that working? Negative mask allows me to only paint in this area, but paint out the rest of it. So now if I'm painting here, we're not getting anything, okay? So having that selection is a nice way of saying, hey, I only want to work within that space. You can turn off use region as mask as well, which will just let you paint normally. But it is kind of a nice way of you saying, hey, I only want to work within that space. Now, the other part that's really useful here is, all right, all I can think of is like Shrek when I'm doing this. Like you ever look at a mountain and you're like, that is a nice mountain. And you want to have that mountain elsewhere. You can use select to like paint that and copy, fit gizmo to region, copy data to gizmo, and you can actually pick up a mountain. And if I put this mountain here, kind of rotate it, let's say I want that mountain over here as well. You can actually set it to paste only raising the terrain or lowering the terrain. So I'm going to go raise the terrain and hit Control V. And what that actually does is that actually copies and pastes this mountain around the place. Control V. And like, see how really quickly we kind of did... that one didn't work as well because I had this ugly mountain in between. So what I'm actually going to do now is lower it to this. And that'll drop the rest of the mountain down to that frame, which I think looks pretty good. Raise it up. Cool. This is also really good if you've kind of... Oh, no, sure. It's also really good if you've kind of got an area that works, but you need to... Yeah, you literally just need to move the asset sometimes or shuffle stuff around. I'm going to put this here, and you can like raise and lower it. So if I kind of wanted this mountain to really just be like around the edges here. If I really like the general noise pattern that I had made there, I could get this and then like lower it down and then be like only set to raise. And now when I paste it, we're going to get just the top of those mountains that we saw there. Like reasonably quickly, we got a pretty good result without really having to care about. And you can scale it too, actually. So I can also kind of get this and be like, hey, I want this to be. I like that mountain, but I really want this to be kind of like that next layer behind this one to really kind of set the scene. So I could paste that in. Is this useful for people, by the way?
Yes.
I don't know what's useful anymore.
Even if I'm just being selfish about it, I didn't know about this, and I'm getting absolutely mind blown.
Right. That's good. That's good. Now ask me when this feature came in.
When did this feature come in?
It came in Unreal Engine 3. It's fine. There's a long list of like UE3 features that no one knows about. And I've made a career out of basically regurgitating the message of the day from UE3, you know. All right, cool. So I'm going to clear the regional selection.
All of these hotkeys. Like, apparently I've been using this engine wrong for the last 15 years.
It's fine. But like I said, so like we kind of created like a nice little crevicey area, and like I should have decorated this more and run erosion on it ahead of time, so the erosion would have looked better on here, and I'd copy and pasted something that's good. I will actually do a shout out for anyone doing UEFN environments that the copy stuff is really good because a clear quality discrepancy that I see in some UEFN projects is you've got like the mountain range that Epic made for the template, and then you've got like the mountain range that you painted. And like, I don't know about you, but anytime like one of the artists at Epic who actually spent time on something has done something like that, I always get like, you know that vibe, you know that episode of The Simpsons where Homer is building the barbecue out back? That's kind of how I feel. If you don't get what I'm referencing, it's probably because I'm now referencing an episode that first aired like 30 years ago. But anyway, in doing so, it's really nice to be able to kind of copy and paste those mountain ranges that you saw. Copy and paste those mountain ranges that you saw and kind of like duplicate them as your things and kind of work with them and mess with them. And then you keep a lot of the interesting detail that they had. And you don't have... Honestly, it's kind of one of those awkward situations where just your mountains are fine and just their mountains are fine. But if you're doing techniques that they weren't doing, you end up with a discrepancy in the overall aesthetic of the mountains, and that is no longer fine. It's like when you get like texel density differences or poly density differences between two meshes that are close. You know what I mean? Like your eye picks up the difference between them, and then you start to get, you know, you're like, oh, this looks bad, and I don't know why. All right, cool. I think that was good. If I do say so myself, I'm going to call this demo map. And I'm gonna go edit plugins, and let's do some other fun stuff. I'm gonna throw the water system on, and I'm just gonna throw the landmass system on. Landmass is cool enough to not need a description for the last 9 versions. So okay, we've got that in. Do I want anything else while I'm here? I think we're good. Okay. Unreal Livestream Jam. Switch projects, yes. All right. Save everything. Meantime, while that's kind of firing up, are there any questions that have come through? I've got some commentary on people liking that episode of The Simpsons, so that's nice.
Yes. Yes. There's over on the YouTube side of things, a few people are wondering if you have any thoughts or opinions that you could quickly give about VDBs at all.
I do not have opinions on VDBs beyond I'm excited to see what people who use Houdini do with it. I have a really awkward thing where I'm pretty knowledgeable in a very specific area, and that very specific area is awkwardly Unreal. If you take me like pre-Unreal, I'm borderline useless. And because of that, like I've never I basically had one period of my life where I really was like, all right, I have time to either sink my teeth into Niagara or sink my teeth into Houdini. And that was a couple of months later, I gave the Niagara talk at GDC, like one of the main demos that we had that year. And awkwardly became the Niagara person. And the result of that was like, I love Niagara. It's great, but like, I got consumed by it for quite a while. So I never really had a chance to like jump into Houdini and do a lot of that stuff. I want to give a shout out to a local developer who's been doing some really cool stuff with VDBs though. So this is loaded. It's just behind the window. A shout out to Dylan Brown, who's... Did I open the wrong project? I totally did. That was a good job. What was the project that we were just running? Does anyone even remember? All right. Oh, it is open. Oh, I just had 2 copies of Unreal running this whole time. That's fine.
It was running very
I was gonna give a shout out
smoothly,
to, it's a good computer. I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, shout out to Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown from Model Farm has been doing some really cool stuff with his setups. He kind of jumped on the 5.3 preview early, I noticed, and I've been kind of like looking a lot at what he's been doing, especially like recently using them for the fog, for the mist around waterfalls was really good. Like, honestly, it was like one of the best looking real time waterfalls I've seen. I was about to like put that in like in a while or something, but no, it's literally just one of the best waterfalls I've seen in the game engine. So that's cool. I clarified it in the end by being like excluding actual waterfalls, but so yeah, he's got some. I've been keeping an eye on that, but unfortunately, I don't have the experience to like do a lot of those fluid sims and then push them in. I can deal with them once they're in Unreal and make them look cool, but I have no experience. So I've been going down a bunch of other rabbit holes since 5.3 kind of stuff.
Sure.
Where was I? Demo map. Here we go. Woo. All right. So I created this environment. I'm going to just hide everything that we had before. And instead, I'm going to show you a fun thing that I like to do. I should have turned on PCG. We've still got 25 minutes. All right, so a fun thing to do is I can go blueprint, and as long as the landmass plugin is turned on, I can grab landmass brush. And I will caution that this isn't for large world partition stuff. This is still set up on like the older, smaller kind of landscapes, and that's because as it gets bigger, it loses resolution in the current form, so it's still... Anyway, how this works is with a spline, you can kind of like create a mountain by just kind of getting these points. So I've kind of carved out a nice little environment there. In the details panel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cap the shape. So we've got like I grabbed this blind point by accident. And that, and then I can kind of move this up and down. I can scale it too. Yeah, good. So I'll put that in the middle there. If you want this to look less like gross, like that's a real hard line on the edges there. If I get this, I could go off and have some fun. I could like add some curl noise. Whoa, too much curl noise. There we go. 0.5 and 0.1. Kind of gives me like a slightly more natural fall off. As well as that displacement's really good for kind of just getting that just out of the box like grittiness. And it depends on what you're making. Like right now I'm apparently making a moon crater, but whatever. That seems good. That's working. Terracing's also kind of cool. You can move the terraces here. So terracing kind of adds this like flat layer around the brim there, and you can like set up how many of those steps that you want to have. Someone just jumped in with "That's no moon." I feel like you've been waiting for that. But it's also worth noting that like I can get this, and a fun part of this is I can pull this to here and plonk it there, but I can then duplicate it and grab this one and pull it up a little bit and kind of create a nice environment this way. And I could grab this one and actually uninvert it so that it's kind of that initial space there. And kind of, maybe I'll put you on the ends. So that's kind of carving down the rest of that environment. Kind of getting me that kind of cool looking plateau-y structure. Oops. And I can grab that and then kind of pull this out to wherever I need to. But like I'm not really doing much that I'm thinking about here, and it's fun to kind of just craft spaces this way. This is acting as a mask for the other two, so when I pull it out to here, that initial one's getting it. Cool. So we've got these kind of like in there, and that feels okay. One thing that I'd like to flag beyond that is another thing that's kind of leveraging on the landscape system is, so the landmass system is you can grab water, and if we wanted to, we could get this whole thing that we've made, and I can drop in an ocean, just assuming works in the most recent build of Unreal. All right, cool. We can see that that's kind of dropped in this oceany area. I'm gonna go back to my landmass brushes and just maybe move all of those up to here. This alpha from the ocean is controlled in a pretty similar way. So this alpha here around is like that fades in that beachfront. If you go down to water height map settings, you can control it the same way, right? So instead of like 45, I could go 25, or I could go really harsh and do like 90 from that point on. Or you could do a width-based fall-off and say, hey, I want the beach to be 512 units in length with an offset of like 100, a Z offset of, we can kind of bring that in where we need to. So it's up to us, and I could put a landmass on top of this as well to kind of to stack them. And like the whole ocean as well is controlled by splines. So if I grab the spline comp for this one, I can pull this ocean out to here. Duplicate that. Like I could. This is a weird island, so don't judge me for this not looking like an actual island. But hopefully that's kind of proof my point. So we kind of got like that general kind of setup, and we can have fun with other elements of that as well. Like if you wanted to, you can add a lake, and I can put this like nice little happy lake on the top here. Yeah, I feel like Bob Ross when I phrase it that way. We're gonna have a happy little lake up here.
That's what I thought you were going
with. Yeah. A cool feature you can do is Unreal actually blends all this stuff together as well. So if I was to get this happy lake and a river collides with it, it'll actually so the water goes from lake to river. See that? Which is really good. So if I was to like get this stuff and kind of, there's a useful shortcut actually. Control tilde. So the number to the left of 1. You may know it as the console button. But if you hit that, that'll go switch between local space and world space. I use that really frequently, especially on splines, where like if I switch to this spline is now, the arrow is now pointing along the spline, which is really useful. And I'm now able to kind of pull that out and drop this down. That was too far down, but it will. All right, so you need to line it up, otherwise you get square water. And that's fine.
Who doesn't love some square water?
Good, actually, right there. A cool thing you can do as well is if you right-click here and say visualize width, this actually lets you widen the river at these locations. So I could kind of grab the river and kind of like pull it in, get my act together. Okay, so, and I can have this kind of coming from a wider point, or, oh god, that was gross. Yeah, so we can kind of have that happening, and we can kind of like bring that in as well. There's a visualized depth. So this depth one is bringing it down to here, but like I could pull that depth up a bit and have kind of like that nice flatter, I'm just going to step in it water. You know what I mean? Oh, I made mistakes. Mistakes were made. All right, that's fine. We can fix that. Did I go too far? Something went wrong. Oh, I know what it is. It's because that one has too much of a tangent, so it's dipping the water. No one wants too much tangent. Whoa, I regret everything that just happened.
Oh. That was kind of fun.
Getting close
I
to
don't
what
know.
we want. This is fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, good. Ship it.
Yeah.
All right, good. So, like, all right, I know that was like a little fiddly towards the end there, but it's less fiddly than making an actual river manually with your own mesh.
Yes.
Cool. So, water, yay. What's other good stuff? You're still stuck with me for a little bit longer. All right, so we've gone through water systems. That's really cool. Other stuff that would be fun. Oh, you know what would be great? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. All right. I need a mesh. Need a mesh. Give me a minute.
Need a mesh? Any mesh?
Yeah, mesh. No, I want a stretchy mesh. Also, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that like we're 2 hours in and I haven't brought in a single non-engine mesh. So I hope this isn't like your ugliest live stream that you've run so far of just like pure white meaning. I'm very aware of that. All right, cool. Yeah, this is a great one. So if you, I'm going to import a pipe. Yeah, don't care. Cool. So we've got ourselves a pipe, right? And I'm going to go blueprint, placeable in the world, so actor, and I'm going to call this spline pipe. And we drop spline pipe into the world, which will be here for the time being. All right, so if I was to go into the construction script, I'm gonna step back just in case anyone's new to Unreal and you're kind of just like checking this out for the first time. Normally you add static meshes, right? And a static mesh would be something like our pipe, and that would be a 3D object, right? We don't want static meshes here. What we actually want to do instead is add a spline, because we can programmatically add static meshes. So instead of adding a static mesh there, like we did just then, I could add a static mesh here through code, right? Well, it's not called PIPOE, it's called pipe. And if I was to do that back in the viewport, you can see that we have a pipe. Now, I bring this up because what I can do is a spline component, which is this line here. We can assess the length of this line and do whatever we need to with it, right? So I can get this spline and I can get the length. Now, the spline length divided by a number, say let's divide it by 200 to begin with, that will tell me how many 2-meter pipes fit along the length of the spline, right? Because if it's 400 units long, 400 divided by 200 is equal to 2. Everyone's with me? Cool. I can't see the Twitch chat anymore. I closed it by accident. So, oh, no, there it is. All right, so we've got that in. Now, if I was to do a for loop, which is a loop that runs the same operation again and again, I can drop you in and I can say, hey, I want to run this spline and add that many meshes. Anyway, TLDR is I can go add static mesh. Oh, no, add spline mesh component. And I'm going to set that to be a pipe. Bring that in. This pipe is now going to be added a bunch of times, but what I actually want to do is set the start and end of the pipe, and this will actually bend the pipe to wherever we need to. Okay, so basically, this counts through. It's like I'm adding the first pipe, I'm adding the second pipe, I'm adding the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, whatever, right? And that every time we've got a new pipe, it's going to be the new index. So index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3. So what that actually means is that if I was to get the, I'm going to promote this to a variable called called pipe length. And I'm going to get pipe length multiplied by the current index. That means that if the pipe's 2 meters long and we're 3 pipes into it, we are now 600 Unreal units into it. Okay, so we've got that going. It's fine. We didn't, people didn't get switched to metric. You got switched to Unreal units.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's fine. So we've got this. This will actually tell me how far along the pipe we are. And the cool part of that is you can look at any spline and you can say get location at a distance along a spline. So I can be like, hey, given this location, where are you? And I can actually go +1. So I can get the current index +1. And that'll actually find where the next piece is going to go as well. So I can duplicate that. And I can find it from the next location and then look at that one's location. Now, it also needs the tangent, and the tangent is the direction and the stretch of that line, right? And what that means is instead of doing the get location distance, I can say get tangent at distance along spline. At this distance, this tangent, same thing again, I'll duplicate it. This spline, this distance, this tangent. And when I hit compile, what that will do is that is working. It's got a clear issue right now, but it's working. So if I was to get this, and I was to go to, hey, when you add the spline component, use the z-axis, it'll now kind of stretch these splines along it. And because I've exposed 200, I can say, hey, you're a 50 centimeter spline, or you're a 200 centimeter spline. Getting a little bit funky in some places. Give me a sec, I messed something up. Let me check it. Location at distance, tangent at distance, location at distance, tangent at distance. This is all correct. I think I need to clamp my tangents. Just a gut feeling that I need the tangent to not be longer than a single piece would be. So I'm going to clamp the vector size of a tangent. Sorry, folks, this went from me being like, this is easy, to me being like, all right, here's some vector math. Sorry. Real quick. But that's fine. All right, let me just double check if that fixes what I'm seeing here. Look at that. Look at that. All right, good. So I basically just said, hey, you can't stretch beyond a certain amount. And what that means is I've now created like a pipe tool that allows me to drag pipe through the world to create what we're doing, right? Now that by itself is kind of cool. I can see uses for that, right? But what I think would be better than this pipe tool is a new feature we introduced in Unreal Engine 5.3, which is if you go to the modeling mode and then go draw spline. So the modeling team added a really cool feature, really cool feature, which does this. You can output a spline to an empty actor, but who wants to do that? No one. What you actually want to do is create a blueprint. And what this actually does is it allows you to create a blueprint where, I'm going to do free draw mode. It creates a blueprint and it overrides the default spline component of that blueprint. The result of which is, if I get this, I'm going to turn off rerun construction step constantly. I can get this and I can draw a line, let go, And then what this will do is run the construction script in post. And what I actually just did was created a very, very easy pipe that's actually following the world really nicely. And the cool part of that is, like, because it's outputting the spline like this, I can then click accept, and I can tweak that, right? So if I was like, actually, this bit of the pipe I need to kind of pull up at some point. By the way, if you're ever going to be dealing with really large splines, like this one, I strongly recommend, there's a nice option in your class defaults, which is, maybe it's class settings? Yeah. Turn off run construction script on drag, and then it will only run your construction script when you've finished dragging. Okay, so it won't try and do it every frame. And that'll give you much faster results for stuff like this. So in this situation, like you saw how that was a huge lag spike, but now I'm able to do this. And once I let go, it'll then have the kick, but it's quicker for me to adjust it. The reason it's so long is because, like, I made this huge piece, right? But the reason I really love this feature is draw spline as a tool. It automatically instantiates a blueprint and creates the thing. And the lovely part of that is what it essentially does is it essentially turns any blueprint with a spline that you've already got into a tool. Like, and I can't stress enough, like, how useful it is having something that just kind of like, we've all made hundreds of spline tools in the past, I'm sure, because what else would I do with my day? But no, we've all made hundreds of spline tools for different reasons, right? And, like, you can use it for, oh, sorry, my dog is trying to get outside. And I have priorities. Dog before live stream. Good buddy.
I get it. I feel like everyone else would agree as well.
Everyone, this is Rufus. He's in the background. So he likes to go out there and hang out on the. So what it essentially does is it turns all of your spline tools that you've already made into usable script tools that you don't have to, like, work towards. You know what I mean? Like, it's free, right? Like, if the tool's already been made in your project, the draw spline tool turns it into a free thing. And a cool part is we have this new thing called presets. So presets got added recently with 5.3, and I can create a new preset, and I can call this pipe tool. Tooltip, it's the best tool. And I can click OK. And under presets, I can now load the pipe tool here. Okay, so that just means that it's a lot easier for me to kind of reach in and just grab the pipe tool that we have. So I can save out, like, the blueprint with a bunch of the settings that are good for the pipe tool and kind of set that up as appropriate. And, like, I could use this for pipes or vines or even if we went, I got 5 minutes. Can I do 5 minutes of PCG? Do we have time for that? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool with that? Yeah? Permission?
No.
All right.
No.
Banned. PCG is banned. All right. Let's turn on PCG. And okay.
I'm excited. I feel like everyone's excited about PCG, but it's just fun. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like I need to be taking notes this whole stream. I have to watch this again and just start writing down all of the tips, tricks, and hotkeys that I'm going to forget in 6 minutes.
I forgot I had this mountain here, so I just kind of put a mountain range in the middle and just merged everything that I just did. But honestly, I'm not even sad at the result because, water kicked in and we kind of created this weird Doom layer. That's okay. Let's stick with Doom. All right, so if I have this and I go and create a new PCG system, for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, PCG stands for Procedural Content Generation. We'll make it live. What this lets us do is we can get points and we can get a ton of points, evaluate those points in some capacity, and then create meshes from them, right? So if I was to go and say, hey, I want to get if I was to get a landscape point as an example, I can sample the surface of the landscape. And when I hit D on this, if I was to drag this into the world, that will now sample the surface of the landscape and put a bunch of points at that location. D is for debug. It creates a bunch of cubes at those locations. Right, so that's useful, but you know what's really useful is I could also go ahead and sample this location, and I could be like, hey, this is good, but what if instead of sampling the landscape, I actually wanted to get spline. So I want to get spline data, and I want to look for the spline within myself. And what that's going to do is it checks me to see if my actor has a spline. And if it does, then I can sample the spline, and I can actually fill up the interior of that spline. So let's take a look at what that looks like. If I was to get a... remember before I said no one would ever want to create a null actor with a spline in it? I'm immediately going back on that. I'm going to create an empty actor with... Do tangent drag. Tangent drag lets me click here, click here, click here. So instead of like regular drag, it does that. So this has now created an empty actor with a spline in it. I'm going to add a PCG component. And I'm going to set this to be PCG example. I'm going to hit D. And in theory, error. What's your error? Sorry. I need to have...
Ah.
All right. Cool. Yeah. Oh, that's weird. Sorry, folks. Give me 1 sec to figure out what I'm doing wrong. Getting spline. It's in the interior. It's being sampled from there. We're not filtering on tags. Spline data itself is myself. Why am I not seeing it? Sorry, folks. I'm doing something silly.
No worries. I think this is good, honestly, because we get some live time debugging.
Yeah, let's go with that. Let me do a real quick check to just see what's going on. Because on interior, I would have thought did it. Okay, unbounded was checked. That's fine. So what this is doing now is this actually auto-fills that spline with squares. And like that means that I can start to do things like I can get this spline that we've just drawn. It's filling it with squares, and I can say, hey, I want to run world transform on you. Oh, you know what? Let's actually cast you down to the world. That'd be good. So I could get you and I could project you to the landscape. And what that should do, if I hit D on it, is it'll actually fill the spline that we just created, but projected back onto the landscape. Do you see that? And I can change the density of that as I see fit. So the spacing here is 100 right now. So I could set this to like 300. And we're going to get a sparser array. I could then transform all of these points. Maybe before I do the projection, maybe I want to transform them. So I could run transform points. And like my transform might be like randomly offsetting them by 150, 150, 150, 150. We're going to rotate in between 0 and 360, 60, and scale between 0.2 and 1. And that kind of gets me like random chaos looking stuff along these bits. But the cool part is like with what we've just done, we can then, it's auto just filling these splines. So we can actually set this to be whatever meshes that we need. But we can also do other things as well that are really fun, right? Like I could get the spline samples that we've got here, and I could also get the spline data of every, all world actors, and I could look for every river, for instance, right? And if I look for every river, and then I spline sample that, that is going to be probably really hard to see initially. Pretty confident this is secretly working. Going to turn you off for a sec. Give me one moment. So the spline sample is You're correct. Ignore self and children. I probably did what I did before. Unbounded. And I want to get you, and I want to not do it on subdivision, but every distance, every 100 units. There it is. So see that white line that we see there? That's because it's now sampling every river that we've got. The reason that's fun that if I sample every river is I could then also look for the distance between the nearest point on the surface and the nearest river piece, and I could cast that distance to density, for instance. I know I've just like gone from 0 to 100 how to draw the owl, but the distance to density as a 2D distance with a gradient scale of say 1,000 should mean that these pieces, I want to set the distance. This distance mode is setting the density. Actually, I could get that. We'll get rid of that one, to be honest. Okay, very good. So there you go. And I could set this to a lower number, like 5,000. And now you can see that any tiles that are close to the water are doing their own bit of logic again. Do you know what I mean? So like, I could then sample this and do things like only grow reeds near the rivers in the splines that I draw. So I could really easily create a blueprint that literally just has a PCG component in it and a spline. And I would now have a nice little biome generator that would let me draw circles of reeds and draw in circles of grass platters or forests or whatever. Because like these meshes here, all right, they're all cubes right now, but literally turn these into any form of mesh whatsoever is literally just grabbing static mesh spawner and feeding the static mesh spawner some data, right? So I can be like, hey, I want you to be a mixture of, I didn't import data. But you know what I did do? I did include starter content, which at the time, everyone was like, why are you including starter content? I could hear it. But you know what it is? It means I can make it tables, right? And when I come back to here, we now have table scattering. What was that? You want to have like, but I can then, the fun part with PCG, right, is like, all right, I've made a joke about tables, but like it's literally very little work to then procedurally scatter chairs around my table. Do you know what I mean? Like I could create a little generator that points chairs to the nearest table and only scatters them in a plot around the table. Weirdest, most unnecessary random thing to have to create. But I just want to point out that like that logic exists because the same stuff also lets me scatter trees and then put down plants and make sure that all of the plants that are in the shade of the tree are able to also be like, hey, I should be smaller because I didn't have the same light growth. That reminds me I should water my lemon tree. But like it hasn't had the same like amount of light coming into it to really let it grow. So like having that kind of setup is really, really powerful. PCG is a definite rabbit hole that you can go down. I love it, and I genuinely think in the next few years, I don't think you're going to see projects launching without some element of PCG, because like in this situation, I'm like, hey, we could quickly put in plants or reeds or tables and chairs, but what we could also do is I could automatically generate beneath every parked car a random chance of oil decals at the start of the game. Or I could make every tree in the world, which I've hand placed, automatically scatter some leaves and branches beneath them, appropriate to the type of tree in the world, thus adding like a secondary layer of detail that I didn't have to like deal with by hand. But the good part is because it's all controlled by a graph, and if there's one thing we know, it's Unreal Engine developers all love graphs. It means that we have like that capacity to kind of like tailor it and author it and have some really cool stuff. So like I do want to flag that like I think this is really exciting. It's the early days, like it's been in there for 5.2 and 5.3, but there's some really cool stuff. Like I did this distance property, but I could be getting that value and then multiplying the density by a random inputted potential scale so that the scale would change and stuff like that. And then, like there's some really cool values that we can do here. So, with that said, we've passed the 2-hour mark, so I'm cool to like dial it back a bit and go get some coffee in me. I'm happy to answer some questions for a little bit. I know this has been kind of a bit of a brain dump, but like awkwardly, the topic was kind of like what's good for people doing game jams, which in my head is simplified down to what's good for anyone who wants to make stuff quickly, which is like a really wide possible number of topics. So
Yeah. That could last
yeah.
way longer than just 2 hours, honestly. So
for sure. But we got somewhere. Yeah. Any questions? I guess popping up. Anything that's.
yeah, I have a couple questions I'm going to toss at you that are a bit more general, just sort of around sort of the idea of jams, and they're going to be more opinion pieces than anything else probably. But the first is if this was someone's very first jam ever, would you have recommendations of where to start?
Where to start in terms of building something?
Yeah, just getting into it and starting the process.
Yeah, okay. So if we're assuming that they already know the fundamentals of Unreal and they're kind of jamming for the first time, the big ones I have there are if you've got access to some form of version control, it's a good idea. Version control is always going to help. Just straight off the bat, game jams are like so likely to break something at any given point. Being able to like roll that back and figure out where you messed up is really powerful. But again, that requires you to have some sort of server or something that has access to that. For the actual like building stuff, I would strongly suggest doing stuff that is low scope. First project, scope down like it's no one's business, and then feel free to feature creep as you go. But keep that core scope really achievable, because a bunch of stuff that like an experienced dev will do in a couple of minutes might ultimately take you a day because you didn't know the obscure node name for something. And that's not your fault. It just comes with like learning. It comes with experience. And like I do want to stress, like I've been using Unreal for a really long period of time. So like a lot of these names and nodes and stuff kind of come like they're buried deep in my head at this point. But having that limitation for that initial project is really going to help you out. Just do something really clean, really straightforward. I would work to our example content strength. There are certain things as well that are going to be really good, but like Lyra is an interesting one where like Lyra is a great project, but I wouldn't personally use it as a foundation for a game jam, just because there's a whole few, like several layers of complexity inside of Lyra that can catch you off guard. And if you're kind of new to Unreal, you get buried very deep. So I would actually recommend, I would target split screen or single player if I could, because then you don't have to care about replication if it's split screen. As a heads up, if you do split screen, in the player controller, move the enhanced input call from begin play to on possess. Otherwise, I don't think player 2's split screen controls work right now. I caught that yesterday. Sorry about that. I'm saying sorry. It wasn't my fault. I'm not the enhanced input team. But I'm sorry for your loss kind of situation. You know what I mean? Like you have to go through that, and that is a thing. Other stuff that's worth noting as initial projects is keep in mind that we have an aggressive amount of permanently free content that you can go to. So if you go to the marketplace, don't stress. I'm not trying to sell you something. Australian internet, what's up? So we have free for the month, and then we have permanently free. Free for the month has like all the stuff that you can claim: Arcvis Interior, Palace Hall. There's a melee combat for a multiplayer here. There's a quest editor plugin which looks really cool. I claim all this stuff every time, and then I never actually go through them. But permanently free collection is really, really valuable for jams. And if you're trying to work out what to build, it's not a bad idea to kind of just scroll through all of the free stuff and be like, that seems like it'd be a fun starting point for a little project that I could work with. Because honestly, if you kind of get the cognitive load of the style choices out of the way early and then build a game around that, that can be a nice way that you kind of set yourself some constraints in the process. Do you know what I mean? Like by looking at this and being like, if I'm working on the stylized village that we have, maybe I want to use PCG to generate a village and do some stuff with. Or, you know, if I look at something else, there's just clearly some good combat assets, building it around that is kind of useful, because otherwise you get into that situation where historically for game jams, art dependency is one of the trickier parts you get, because you need animations, you need 3D models, you need skeletal meshes, et cetera, and it can get out of hand pretty quick. So if you know you've kind of already knocked a big chunk of that on the head for one reason or another, that's really powerful. And of course, you got Quixel to weigh on. These animal packs are good examples of stuff that you could roll with. So yeah, like I said, I would probably go down those initially.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that was fantastic advice for getting started in there. There was such a plethora of tips and tricks that happened throughout the rest of this stream as well, which I did want to take a second to let everyone know, in case you missed any part of the stream earlier. Don't worry, we post all of them in video format that can be viewed on demand. No worries. On both our Twitch.
Sorry, my headphones completely cut out. Sorry.
You're good.
My phone went off next to me, and that took control of my headphones. So sometimes, I don't know what's going on.
You're not allowed to listen anymore. You said Zed just one too many times, so we had to...
Just one too many times. Yeah, I've been taken out.
But yeah, we post all of our streams in video format. So if you missed any of the other tips and tricks that were just kind of in throughout the rest of the stream, you can find them pretty much at your leisure whenever you need it. And yeah, I think we'll probably call it there for today, since we've already taken up 2 hours of your time this morning. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I hope this was useful to people, and not too much of a strange brain dump. But yeah, keen to see what everyone creates. If you do something that's building off of anything that I went through here, I'm keen to see what you did with it. Make it feel like I achieved something. So that's always good. Yeah, so feel free to tag as appropriate. But yeah, otherwise, good luck, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you for being here. And also thank you, Dan, for coming out from behind the curtain to also hang out with us today.
I will return to my cave here shortly.
Yes. Gremlin away, sir. But yes, also thank you everyone who watched. Just in case you missed the announcement at the beginning of the stream as well, we're going to be officially kicking off the Mega Jam next Thursday. We're going to be officially announcing the theme for this year at the hour mark in next week's stream. So make sure you come hang out, check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of build up for it beforehand, so it's a good time. Make sure you come check it out. I've also posted the link to the main page on the YouTube version of this stream. It's going to be listed in the description there, so you can go take a look at the rules, also the prizing, all that good stuff. But we'll also be discussing that next week as well. So hopefully you got some really good tips and tricks that you can take with you into the jam starting next week, and we'll see you then. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out, and hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you later. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.